Welcome to the Passion for Compassion podcast. I'm Sarah Lanier, and today's guest is
Fritzi Horstman. Trauma separates. 98% of the people in prison and probably 100% of the people in prison have experienced some kind of trauma. We're all capable of the magnificent and of the horrors. When we heal people, they don't want to hurt anymore. The only way we can do it is to...
For those that don't know who you are, could you just kind of explain who you are and who you help and why you do it?
Sure. So my name is Fritzi Horstman, and I'm the founder of the Compassion Prison Project. And I'll just say our mission is to create trauma-informed prisons and communities. And trauma-informed is showing people that when we have responses that fall out of who we truly are, when we're violent, when we're reactive, when we're angry, maybe some of that comes from trauma that happened to us years and maybe decades ago, and it's still in our body. And so so to become aware of our trauma allows us to actually start healing it, because you can't really heal anything if you don't know you have it. And right. What I found is that 98% of the people in prison and probably 100% of the people in prison have experienced some kind of trauma, even if it's just violence in the streets, violence in their neighborhoods, or violence in their schools. Witnessing violence is just as bad as experiencing violence. The brain can't tell the difference. Mm-hmm. So most of the people in prison, or all of them, have had some kind of traumatic experience, and that has affected their body and their brains and their spirit. You know, one of the things I quote Joseph Campbell. He says, "The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are." And so to help the men and women in prison remember that being who they are is what we're here for. I don't care where you're living. If you're in a cell or if you're, in a mansion, we're here to remember who we are. As this is our spirits, this is who we are. So wherever we are, it doesn't matter. We can still be free, as we were talking about, in our minds. We can create and we can give to the world no matter where we are. There's a man, I'm thinking of Alan. He lives in Lancaster, and he's one of the most evolved, enlightened men I've ever met. And we sat together. We were at a graduation for one of our courses, and he said, "Look at all these people enjoying each other and together in this." And the way he spoke, just one of the most incredible humans I've ever met on this planet. And he lives in prison, right? He did something harmful. But guess what? We all have, right? We've all done something. Right. We've also done harmful things to ourselves, to each other. I sometimes get frustrated at my dog. I'll yell at my dog, and how awful is that? We are all capable of creating the Holocaust, and we're all capable of creating, some of the most majestic things. I just thought of the Brooklyn Bridge. We're all capable of creating that. In some way, or we can participate in that. So it's really about, we can do whatever we want, but demonizing people in prison doesn't help things. And actually, what they say is what you do to others, or what you think about others, you think about yourself on some level. So it's those kinds of things that we do at Compassion Prison Project.
I think it's so important to have compassion for prisoners, and for anybody, really. I think that even for ourselves, that's one of the most important things in moving forward and making changes in your life. And I know that for some people, it's sort of an odd concept, but what would you say to those people that don't think that people that have done wrong or that have been locked away, they think that they don't deserve compassion? What would you say to people like that?
Well, first off, I would first ask them to say if they have compassion for themselves. First, I would say, are you kind to yourself? And have you given yourself a break lately? Because what I find is the harder I have been on myself, I'm much harder on the rest of the world. And so I feel like our criminal justice system was created by a lot of people who were traumatized and who have experienced a lot of pain and want justice. But justice is not fierce retribution. Justice is finding, I would say justice, if you ask me what justice is, finding a way to repair the harm. How do we repair the harm that was created? And so if it's murder, right, we can't bring that person back. Okay, so I have to I have to pull up the quote from Juan, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is
Love to hear it.
one of the most profound things I've ever heard. And so he quotes the Bible. It's Luke 12:48. He says, "To whom much is given, from him much will be required, and to whom much more is given, from him much more is required." And then he said, "He who has caused much harm, much good is required. And to him who has caused much more harm, much more good is required." So
That's beautiful.
Right? I mean, that sums it up. And that's someone who's living in prison who not only is he's extraordinary. And so he realizes his duty now to the world is to repair this harm and even more. It's not even just doing what he can, it's everything. He realizes this is what he has to do. This is his, much more is required from him. But wow, right? Wow. Those are the people that are living in prison. So do we want to cut them off? Do we want to cut them off from their ability to help heal the world? Or do we want, which is basically cutting off our own hands or cutting off our tongue or cutting off a part of our body, because I've come to understand that we are all connected in this world. And when we try and remove something from us, from ourselves, it comes back in ways that we don't want them to. When we ostracize anybody, they come back and they hurt some more. But when we bring them into the family in ways that they've never been involved in a family, they only want to do more help. They want to help even more. So
exactly.
That's what's possible. In my vision is that when we heal people, they don't want to hurt anymore. And not only that, they want to give back and they want to help make sure that this doesn't happen again.
I think that's a great way of explaining how important it is to have restorative justice and not just to punish people whenever they do wrong. And I know that's really controversial and people are really resistant to that idea. But I think that is the only way that you can heal, is if you are prioritizing the restoration of these people and showing them that they have the ability to change their life instead of saying, you're going to be this way forever and we're going to punish you for it.
Right. Since you were born, have you ever stayed the same?
Mm-mm.
Not one cell in your body is the same that it is from when you were born, right? And it happens 98% changes every year. So how can we just say that this human now is incorrigible and will not change? It's just not even possible. It's like a flower. A flower comes, it changes every day. It blossoms and then it dies and then it comes back again. So, it's, I'm not really that religious, but like the resurrection of Jesus, it's the same thing. It's the resurrection of our own souls, but it's also of our own society, because what we're doing to others, we're doing to ourselves. So as we allow for the resurrection of our society and forgive all, because that's what it's about, right? It's about the deep forgiveness of our society, of forgiving everything we've done, all of us, to everything and every we have to forgive it all. Then we can build a new world. But it's because we have so much shame and guilt, I believe, and I've got my own shame and guilt that I'm working through, because we have that self-hatred. We're looking, and we've all been trained to look outside to make us feel better instead of doing the work inside. So it's really outside. Being mad at somebody or having a person in prison make you feel better is not going to do it. It will do it for a moment, but it's not going to take away your own sense of unworthiness and your own sense of pain. So the work is really in you. You're not going to get it from somebody in prison. You're not going to get it from killing someone on death row. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly.
And you think this is going to make you feel better, and it does for a moment. You get that little boost. The dopamine goes and bing, bing, bing. But tomorrow you wake up and you still hate yourself. And the only way we can do it is to forgive. But we have to forgive ourselves first. We do that, then we don't want to kill anybody else, because we know we're all capable of all of it. Putting people in prison won't stop it. The only thing that stops it is forgiving yourself.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And I think it's so important to hear other people's stories and hear how they've changed, so that other people that have been through the same thing can have the opportunity and realize that there is an opportunity for change. Because if you suppress those voices, then people who have been through similar things and maybe didn't get the same punishment for it, then they can see it as, oh, I can change too. I can do something else with my life that actually is beneficial to society and meets my needs and allows me to have connection with people in a deeper way and helps me to be more authentically myself. And I think that's really powerful. And I know you talk to a lot of people. And the thing that brought me to you was the video Step Inside the Circle, where you talk to 235 men, all talking about the experiences that they've had and the trauma. And I was going to ask you about that. I know some people may have not seen it before, so maybe you could explain like what it was like and what it was and the environment and how it changed people's lives after seeing that other people have been through the same things as them.
That's the key. Is I always say that trauma separates and community heals, because when someone is hitting us as a child, or someone yells at us all the time and tells us we're no good, like parts of us fracture. Carolyn Mays talks about this, but there's like we fracture and we feel separate from other people. We feel separate from ourselves. And what happens when you do this work in community, and it's not just Step Inside the Circle, which is people take steps inside the circle towards each other for every adverse childhood experience they've had. So I don't know if you know what an ACE is. Do you know what an ACE is?
I don't think I'm familiar.
So an ACE, it's on our website, but you can take the test. There's the top 10 ACEs it's the Adverse Childhood Experiences Quiz, and they surveyed 17,000 people in San Diego. And what they found is that the more adverse childhood experiences a person experienced, the more adverse health outcomes happened to them later on in life. So of the 10, I have 8 of them. And in prison, I think it's 79% of the men and women in prison have 4 or more ACEs. And 64% have 6 or more ACEs. But it's not only bad health, adverse health outcomes, it's also adverse social outcomes. So more likely to be in prison, be in the juvenile justice system, more likely to be homeless, things like that. So what we're finding, so as they take steps, so these are the top 10, just so you know: physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, parent or caregiver addicted to drugs or alcohol, parent or caregiver mentally ill, suicidal, or depressed, domestic violence, parents divorced or separated, and a household member going to prison. So that's a lot of adversity. And so a lot of them, I ask them to hold up their hands. How many do you have? A lot of them hold up 10. And then we do another set of 10 questions that I created that are more, and it's on the website also, that are more pertinent to people living in prison. More people, like, did you witness violence outside your home? Were you assaulted outside your home? Those kinds of questions. Like, I didn't have those kinds of things happening outside my home. And then you learn the brain science. So that's the other thing, is I teach the brain science. What happens to the brain when it's traumatized? Well, you go into fight or flight. And when you're in fight or flight, I don't know, have you ever, someone criticize you and suddenly you're saying things you don't mean to do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fight or flight. So you say or do things you don't want to do. So you're not doing it. The cortex, the part of you that makes you human, is offline. And because when there's a bear in the room, you can't think, should I run or what should I do? You have to get out of there. But so your body takes over, and the body takes over but also makes you do and say things you don't want to do. So suddenly we have, 2 million people in the United States that are incarcerated for doing and saying things they didn't want to do, for the most part, right? For the most part. And then there's some people there that are sociopaths. But then I'd say, let's look at their brain. Let's see if there's a tumor. Let's see what happened developmentally. How were they raised? What are those questions? We have to ask more questions before we condemn somebody to death, before we condemn them to prison for the rest of their lives. And we also have to see, are they redeemable? Do they change? Let's not just, put the gavel down and say, finish. We can't just say finish. How would you like it if somebody said finish? We can't just say finish. You're done. No, nobody's done. We're constantly evolving. And what I'm learning is the men in prison, I have 3 people working for me that were incarcerated, all with life sentences. And these men are doing everything they can to repair society, to to do more, even more good, as Juan said. They are here doing much good, and they're driven. So, we're not going to, the past is gone. We can't say, oh yeah, we have a screwed up system. Let's say, okay, this doesn't work so well. Let's find something that works better with the new information that we have. That's all. I don't want to blame anybody, because blame puts us back in the past. Blame puts us in our amygdala, in our fight or flight system, and shuts down our cortex. So when we're blaming, complaining, living in the past, worrying about what happened, we're not creating a new world. And that's the key here is, do we want to live in the past and bring up the past and wait for somebody to apologize? Because it's probably not going to happen, right? So in the meantime, it's your energy that's left,
right,
not creating, not making a new world, and not living a glorious life. So, the past, I've learned that the past, even just the recent past, like somebody bugging me, somebody doing something I didn't like, I'll just bring up the past. I'm like, why am I bringing up the past right now? It's not helping. And it's actually getting in the way of my beautiful life, right?
And reliving that trauma.
And you see, the body, all the mechanisms of the trauma that happened the first time, it's back on again in the body. So it's your body's responding in the same way. Is that what you want? You want to keep all that crap, all those cortisol and adrenaline coming through your body again, because you're thinking about what he said to you 4 years ago, right? Which I'm 62, so I've spent a lot of my life in the past. Not today, though. Today I'm pretty,
right.
I'm here right now.
Present. I love that. I've had a lot of experience with anxiety and hypervigilance, and I still I wake up every morning on alert mode, you know what I mean? Oh. And it's not because I'm reliving those experiences, but the things that have happened to me have had an effect on my body so much that even when I don't think about that stuff, it's sort of like my body's on repeat, you know what I mean?
Well, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Have you heard of that?
I've heard you talk about it, and I actually wanted to ask you about it. Yeah, it's by Bessel van der Kolk. But that's it. You see, your body, you're not thinking about it, but you're waking up hypervigilant. So your body still thinks that it's still happening, or it could happen at any minute. So I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry whatever happened to you. But there are ways, like EMDR would be a really good thing for you to consider, or talk to your therapist. But there are treatments to help you calm your nervous system. So, because right now you feel safe, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you? Not in my body, but in general, yes.
Okay. So, but not in your body.
Conceptually.
So, right. So this is where you have to, I would say this is a good time to let your body know that it's safe. And there's a thing called havening, which I highly recommend to you. And I would look it up so you can, there's a guy, Paul, he can walk you through it. I'll send you a link. But it's really important for somebody. So it's traumatic events that happen. I'm assuming you have some trauma in your life. Yeah. Welcome to the club.
Don't we all?
Yeah. But that's how we heal, is when we, in little small bits. You don't want to bring it all up at once, but you really have to let the body know that it's okay now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, maybe your body doesn't feel safe for some reason. I don't know, but maybe your body can tell you. I'm not a therapist, but what I do know is that we do heal. We can heal, but awareness is the first step. And I think you just got a little dose of awareness right now. I think.
Yeah, I saw that you talk about that book and how it kind of changed the way that you talk to people, and it changed your experience and led you to keep doing what you're doing. And I really want to read it. I found out about it in the last few days, so I have it ready to read, and I'm going to. But I did ask ChatGPT some different things, and I was practicing and moving my body more and figuring out the different techniques in that book. So I'm really excited. I am going to read it, and I'll get back with you on that.
Yeah, and it's a lifelong process. But again, right, your body's living in the past. Mm-hmm. right? So that's not happening anymore, but your body doesn't believe it. And so this is what this work is about, is coming into the present moment. Because now, if you think about it, Sarah, just in this very moment, is there anything wrong?
No.
Right. Right. So that's a clue. That's a clue that you can give your body eventually that it's okay, it's safe. And, I want you to wake up one of these days feeling safe and feeling that it's okay. I wish I had more, I'm not a therapist, so I don't want to, I don't want to cross any boundaries, but
no, you're good.
I think there's an opportunity for you to heal on this because you're young. How old are you?
21.
Am I allowed to ask that? I don't know. You don't work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're 21, right? So you don't want to spend the rest of your life waking up petrified. No. So,
and that's sort of what led me to my work, is trying to figure out, like, why do I feel so strongly all the time? And what are all these intense emotions doing? Like, I thought that there was something wrong with me for feeling all these intense emotions all the time. And I think a lot of people probably also think that, and they just don't realize that there's something you can actually do about it.
Yeah. And as I said, awareness is the first step. And, it's one of our plans is to launch our curriculum to people in society so that they have a chance to take some time and look at what happened to them as well. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. You've just had a traumatic event or 5 or 10, just like all of us. And, it lives in your body until you can teach the body that you're safe. That's what you have to contend with, which is, it's just part of the deal of being human here. That's what we're dealing with.
Do you think that most people that are in prison don't know how to manage these emotions effectively? And maybe that's why they have done harmful things to people?
Well, but it's back to all of us. It's not just people in prison. I yelled at my son when he was 2 years old. I hurt my son. I hurt my son's brain. I've seen what's happened to him because of what I did as a mother. If I had known what I know now, my son would not have had any trauma. I think I gave him 2 or 3 ACEs. So plus he's been bullied at school. So that's at least 4 ACEs that he's endured since he was a young man, since he's grown up. Now, ACEs is before you're 18. So all of this is before you're 18. But if it happens to you afterward, it still counts, right? It doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma. It's just, but what they were saying was that if it happened before you're 18, these are the adverse health outcomes that happen later in life. Like 3 or more ACEs, there's a higher incidence of autoimmune diseases. And a lot of women just in society have autoimmune diseases, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, all these things that are like the body is hurting itself, right? The body is attacking itself. This is all, to me, the roots of this are all trauma. So you don't want to have rheumatoid arthritis when you get older. You don't want to have autoimmune disease. You don't want to have addictions. All these things are the body trying to right itself, right? Because something happened, an assault happened, an invasion of homeostasis was disrupted by the trauma, right? For me, it was watching my parents fight, or my mother yelling at me, or my mother hitting me. Those were the things that kind of, it disorients the body. And then the body's like, what the hell happened? You got to watch out now because you don't know when it's going to come back, right? So that's what's going on with you. That's what's went on with me. I still bite my nails because I've been nervous all my life, worrying about something happening, or I've had road rage, or, I stand in line at Costco and I'm just like, why is it taking so long? Why? Because if you notice that, I don't want to be in the present moment. I want to be in the future when I don't have to wait in line anymore. So why is it taking so long is anxiety, which is from the traumatic event when I was a child, my mother hitting me not knowing me thinking it was safe to be in my body and it wasn't. So now I'm not safe in my body. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
there's like 2 ways. Like there's that, and then there's whenever you focus on like the things that you don't want to happen. Like there's 2 different types, like worry and anxiety. They kind of show up in those 2 different ways.
Yeah, you don't want it to happen, right? Because your mind is focused on keeping you safe. That's what the brain and the body want. So you have this, you have your brainstem. Your brainstem is constantly on fight or flight. It's constantly wants to make sure you're safe. So it's hypervigilant, it's hyper alert, and it'll keep coming up with the past, keeping you in the past. You've got a lot to process, I think. I
don't even know what most of it is. So
I know, but all the things you're talking about, waking up and having these thoughts, these invasive thoughts, are they kind of invasive or?
Well, I've kind of managed that. Once I recognized that, and most of my anxiety came from focusing on the outcomes that I don't desire to happen. Then I started to focus more on the outcomes that I wanted to happen. But now I'm left with the bodily effects. Like I still feel all the same feelings, but I'm not thinking in that way anymore. I still feel like I am,
Well, but you still are, basically. You think you're tricking yourself, but the body keeps the score. So, but there is help. There is a lot of help out there. There's things called like neurofeedback, yoga. Have you done yoga? Mm-hmm. See, I didn't like yoga, but yoga's really good because the thing about yoga, you're sitting in a pose, right? You're holding a pose and you get uncomfortable, right? But you're in your body uncomfortable. And then, you get to release it, but you get to feel what it's like to be in your body uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what you don't want, right? You're uncomfortable. You don't want to be in your body uncomfortable. And that's why I didn't like yoga, but that's why it worked.
Sounds very helpful.
Yeah. Maybe take maybe one of those gentle yoga classes just to, it's about being in your body again. That's the thing. Because anxiety, you basically with anxiety, you just don't want to be where you are. You don't want to be here. You'd rather be blaming in the past or worried about the future, right? On some level. But I think, I think you were drawn to me because of the work that you intuitively know is in front of you. But you are not alone, my dear. You are just part of the human race, right? We all have some kind of anxiety, and we all have some kind of depression. We all have, desires unfulfilled, and we all have big wins in our lives, right?
Absolutely.
And so
I appreciate you saying that too.
Why?
Because for you to acknowledge it, that's probably why I was drawn to your work and drawn to all of this. It really hits home for me. It really resonates because whenever I started to find out that the things that I was doing was working for me and was helping me, that's actually what led me to want to share it with other people. And so you're exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's beautiful. It takes a lot to decide I'm going to do a podcast.
Yeah. One thing that I have a little bit of trouble with teaching people is how to get people to acknowledge the things that have happened to them and the effect that it has had on them, but not using it as an excuse to do harmful things to other people or to themselves. And I was wondering what your take on that is.
Well, we can't teach people. We can't make people do work they don't want to do. That's just the first thing. And so as a traumatized person, I didn't have boundaries and I let people walk all over me. And I finally have stopped that. I have finally said, no, I'm not going to be treated like this. No, this isn't okay. And so it's really, especially as a woman, we're kind of taught to be
people
nice.
Please.
Yes. Well, yes, it's called fight flight. You've heard of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's freeze. You've heard of that? Fight, flight, freeze.
Mm-hmm. Submit.
Well, and then there's fawn.
Oh.
Which is people pleasing. And that's a way that people who were traumatized, it was let's just make everything okay. Whatever I have to do to make everything okay, that's what I'm going to do.
That's exactly me too. I resonate with that.
Yeah. And welcome to the Women Club. I mean, there are men who fawn too, but what we want is it to stop. We just want it to stop. And, like in the case of my mom, that was my only choice because I still had to live with her. So So that was how I learned that strategy, and that I've taken that into my adult life. But to look at that, because here's the thing, you say, this doesn't work for me anymore. You may lose a friend. You may lose a boyfriend. You may have to. But the thing is, once you tell yourself this is unacceptable, and
that reminds me of a quote, confrontation isn't the problem, it's dealing with the problem.
Yeah, it's you got to take care of yourself first, we all need connection. We all need to be in relationships. I understand that. But if somebody crosses the line, they've crossed the line, and only you know what that line is. Mm-hmm. No one else can give you that line. Make sure you honor your line. It doesn't matter, people aren't allowed to curse around me. That's your line. I mean, to me, that's fine. I curse all the time. But that's your line. You tell them that's your line and they cross it. That's it. I mean, that's not the best example. But to me, verbally abusive, being abusive to me that's a line. I don't know. But for some people, that doesn't seem like abuse. So that's fine. But then go do that over there, because I don't do that. And if I do it to other people and I cross their line, you darn well know I'm going to be accountable and say, I'm sorry. And if I lose a friend because I've crossed a line, I'm sorry. And I understand you need to have your boundaries. It's hard though. Having boundaries is really hard, because I did not teach myself to think of myself first. So relationships were primary, but that's what there's a thing called attachment theory, which is in my curriculum. Mm-hmm. But when we are attaching to our parents, if they're violent to us, our little bodies are confused, because we need them to feed us. We need them to hold us. We need them to talk to us. But if we don't know if they're going to be hurtful to us or not. So we're in this situation. I don't know if you were abused as a kid or if your parents were hurt you. So that's none of my business, but my mother was. And so I lived in this state of, am I safe to ask to go into the fridge or whatever? Am I safe? And so I learned strategies, but
you weren't prioritizing your needs though.
Well, I couldn't. Well, I was, because I needed to eat and be not
your need for safety. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, all of this brings up everything, right? This is the work this is work you've just asked for, because you just asked to talk to me. And I said yes for some reason. When you said nonviolent communication, I was like, yeah, I'll talk to her.
Well, I want to go as far as I can with this, with my social media and talking to people. And so this is just the start of the journey. And I'm so glad that you're able to be a part of it. One thing that you were talking about in the beginning of what you were saying was, we were talking about how to get people to recognize that the things that they've been through has impacted them, but they're able to change in the future. And one thing I thought about when you were saying that is something I've realized recently that you might find really interesting, is the difference between contributing and determining factors. So something may have happened to you that was really terrible, or you see it as really terrible and it affected you really deeply. And then you can also see it as, this thing has contributed to the things I've done, but it's not going to determine my future. So it's a contributing factor. It does have effect, but it does not determine the trajectory of your life.
That's correct. And that's, for most of us, that's what trauma is. It doesn't determine, but it has contributed to a whole big mess that I made out of my life. But I'm cleaning it up. And
you're doing quite well. If I do things to myself,
I'm helping others clean it up. That's what's good. And that's what you find in prison though. You find people, like, once they get this, they're like, I want to share this with other people. So
right?
Yeah, so now they're sharing with their families and hopefully their kids, and my North Star is to end child abuse. Like, let's just end child abuse. Let's just realize that these are our beautiful, beautiful, beautiful children that deserve all the love we can muster, and not to blame anybody, because I think when we start blaming people, we forget what we're capable of, and we just dehumanize the whole mess, and we can't afford to do that anymore. We can't afford to do that.
I completely agree. Abuse in general, just let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone deserves to be abused, and that word is, to me, I don't even use that word. I don't even use the word deserve. It's a bad word in my vocabulary because I see the dangers of using that. You're implying that because someone did something that you have to punish them or you have to punish yourself, or you know what I mean? It just has so many implications that are unhelpful and that are, I say, death dealing. There's life serving and then death dealing. And those are kind of how I weigh the words. And anytime you're using the word deserve, you're contributing to death dealing language, in my opinion.
Well, when you're talking like people deserve a punishment, but what about deserving to feel safe?
But that implies that something they did made them deserve it.
Well, here's the question. Do you deserve to feel safe?
I just don't think it's, I think the question is asking like in a sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
I think that everyone has the capability and that it would be beneficial.
Yeah. It's like, I get it. I get deserve is it is an entitlement. And I see the distinction. I think you're right. Although I do think that feeling safe and waking up feeling good and safe is something to work towards.
Oh, absolutely. That's on my top of my to-do list, checklist. One thing that I was kind of wondering, I know you touched on psychopaths very lightly earlier, and something that I feel personally kind of conflicted with whenever I think about seeing the humanness in everyone. What do you think about people that are unwilling to change or that like don't want better? And I know you probably see this firsthand with people that like their hearts are almost hardened to the point where they're like, I this is what I want, and it's really harmful, but I don't care because this is what I want. I don't want to change. I don't want to do better. Do you think that there is hope for those people?
Well, I don't know if anybody will change until they're ready. So I think that, again, it's back to all of us. You know, I remember when I was pregnant and we were painting the house and I didn't care about the fumes. And my husband was like, it's toxic. And I was just like, I don't care. Or I would drink coffee. You know, my poor son now loves coffee but I wasn't ready to hear the wisdom that was being told to me. And, so I will go to prisons and I will see, there's level 4 prisons where a man was just murdered again, right? So there's some things going on there that people are not ready. They're not ready. They're just, but same with our society, right? It's just the same. We can say, but what about the people in prison? They will not change. It's same with the grumpy guy at the grocery store who's mean to everybody. And then, it's, or like Scrooge. Right? Scrooge is the same story. You know, he was an a-hole to everybody. And then one day he realized, wait, I'm mortified at what I've done. You know, so we all have that ability to be a different person. We all do. There are sociopaths out there. There are people that hurt other people predatorially. And, that's why we have prisons to remove them and so that they can stop it and take a look. I don't think prisons the way they are right now is the best way, but I think a place where people can go and get help they need and be able to take a look at what they've done. I think that's really an important thing. And we need to stop the harm. We can't let them continue this, but done with compassion, right? Done with compassion. To recognize, that's the definition of compassion, is that my pain is no different than yours, and what you're going through is no different than what I'm going through, and that we're in this together. And that's what we're doing. When we're in this together, we can figure something out. But when it's us versus them, when it's good versus bad, then the good get rewarded and the bad get punished. And that's what we've done with our children. We've punished our children. We've hurt our children. And this is the result. When we do that to our children, people go to prison, or they do terrible things to their kids, like I did. So we're all capable of the magnificent and of the horrors. That's what being human is. That's the deal. But we're also divine, right? We're also divine. So I tell everyone in prison that they're divine humans. But let us never cast stones, right? Because we've all had those awful thoughts, those horrible thoughts. We're all there. We're the whole rainbow we're the whole spectrum of it all.
I want to believe that there's hope for those people. you know?
For
I
which
really
people?
do. For even the people that are unwilling to change right now, or the people that are psychopaths or sociopaths that people say, oh, well, that's just the way that they are. Like, there's no changing it, blah, blah, blah. I really want to believe that if you could get them in touch with their feelings and their needs and help them to recognize that the decisions that they make creates the life that they're going to live. And if they're going to live in a way that is in connection with other people and to live honestly and to have compassion and empathy for people, that you need to work with other people. You can't just disregard people and take pleasure in their pain. And I think if we help people to understand that, I really want to believe that there's hope for those people. But I just wanted to hear what your take was on that, because I know you work with people a lot.
I mean, I think there's hope for us all. I mean, the thing is, the people who are sociopaths usually have either been neglected unimaginably or have been, dehumanized unimaginably. I don't really know. I don't know the whole path of a sociopath or a psychopath, but I do know, again, I am capable of that. So if it's true for me and I'm changing, right? I'm changing. I mean, when I'm in fight or flight, I say and do things I abhor. I am mortified that I said. And that's just, I would say 95% of the people in prison are exactly the same. They are mortified by what they've done. They cannot believe they've done such awful things. And usually when I talk to someone and they talk about their crime, they will talk about the person that they harmed. And they will say, John Smith, the man I killed, he's not walking now. So how do I have the right to blah, blah, blah. So there's an awareness there. I mean, it is a big thing. They have to deal with forgiving themselves. Deal with it. They're alive. They have the privilege to forgive themselves, right? But they're working on forgiving themselves. And that's a very important piece. Have you forgiven yourself?
Oh, absolutely. NBC mostly revolves around forgiveness and not seeing right and wrong as these things that we need to put on ourselves as an identity, even though we can see an action as being right and wrong, even though that's, but if you see yourself as wrong for doing it, you're automatically going to feel guilty. Right. And so I think getting beyond those labels and saying past right and wrong, this thing didn't align with my values and I have the ability to change what I do in the future. I think that's really, really helpful.
I love Marshall Rosenberg's work. He has this series, it's 8 parts. Yeah. In one of them, he talks about the criminal justice system. He talks about good and bad, how that's violence. And, so he's informed a lot of the thinking that I have in imagining a system where we put people who have committed harm, but we take care of them and we don't make them feel bad. We make them, take accountability for sure about what they've done, but, to help them find a way back from their violence or their violence that they learned as children or however they learned their violence.
I was actually just listening to that this morning. I believe you're talking about the one about authority. Is that right?
I think that's it, yeah.
Something that really stood out to me, and I was actually going to mention it to you, was he talks about this cartoon in his office, and it's 2 thin, bearded men, and they're strapped to the prison wall, and one of them says to the other, now here's my plan. And I love that because it just shows, like, no matter what institution or what structure you're in that's oppressive, your mind is still free, and nobody can control your mind unless you let them.
That's right. That's right. I think freedom is a state of mind. I think prison is a state of mind. And a lot of people that are accessing my program, Trauma Talks, are finding out. Some of them aren't in prison, and they're finding their own kinds of freedom. So that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. And I love the work that you're doing. I really appreciate that you're coming on here to talk about it, because I really think people need to know about it.
Yeah. So what led you to want to interview me? I'm curious.
So I actually watched Step Inside the Circle, and it touched me so much. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, I need to interview her. Like, I need to talk to her. I need people to hear about it. And so I thought that by talking to you, maybe you could shed some light on the people that need nonviolent communication the most.
Yeah, I don't know if they need it the most. I think we all need it the most.
Yeah.
it's weird, people that commit harm are being unconscious, I think. I don't think most people have this desire to be harmful. But as Marshall Rosenberg says, they have a need that needs to be met. They feel like there's a need that isn't being met, so that for whatever reason they've committed harm. I mean, I think learning how to communicate compassionately is something we all could use a little bit of practice with. And I mean, how many of us are being unkind to ourselves, right? How many how many negative things are we putting into the world right now? Maybe we haven't killed somebody or done something really violent, but having a judgmental thought is putting that into the world. We're actually putting it into the world. And we don't think so. We think it's just in our heads, but
exactly.
It actually, a thought is a creation. Eventually, is a creation, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we all have the opportunity to take a look at ourselves and take a look at why are we being negative. I have a teenage boy, and he's like, this is the worst day of my life. Mm-hmm. I have 4 homework assignments. It's like. Yep. It's like, okay, well, let's kind of see what really
zoom out.
Yeah, let's zoom out. That's but yeah, so as we evolve ourselves, but as we evolve together, because I think when I evolve, it helps you, and when you evolve, it helps me. That it kind of makes us all. It helps us all. So as we're evolving together to help people remember that it's not that bad, it's not that drastic, because that's what the brain creates, right? When he says I have 4 and this is the worst day of my 4 assignments and this is the worst day of my life, he's made these 4 assignments so much bigger than they really are, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. We catastrophize things.
Absolutely.
So. But that's all in our heads. It's all in our heads. So as I say in my curriculum, catch a thought. We have to catch these thoughts, because if we let them go crazy, we'd literally go crazy, or at least for that moment.
And that is so powerful. And I love that you show people through your work that your mind controls your reality. And if you don't recognize that and you don't identify all the thoughts that are in your head as things that aren't all true, then you're not going to be able to change your reality. If you believe everything you think is true, you're going to live that way, and you're not going to see the results that you want. I'm really, really happy that you bring a different perspective to these people and you shed a light on all of these things that have impacted them. You're able to show them that other people have been through this too. There's people that have done really bad things as a result of this thing happening to them. And then there's other people who use that to connect with others and to inspire people and to uplift people. And that you have that decision. You can look both ways and say, okay, I want to go this way. This is what I want to do. I want to help people not have to go through what I went through. And I think it's so powerful, especially talking to people who think that there's no hope. They think, even society thinks that there's no hope for them, to say that you have the power to choose what you do with the rest of your life. Right. And how you want to interact with people. And so I really, really appreciate that you do that kind of work. And I think that's honestly the most impactful thing that you can teach somebody.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm happy to be the very first one. And I just want to leave you with this quote. It's by Mother Teresa. And she says, if we have no peace, it's because we've forgotten that we belong to each other. So, yeah.
I love that so much. I'm so glad you shared that. I haven't heard that in so long. I'm going to have to write that one down. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you being here and your willingness to be part of this discussion. And hopefully, once I get around to some more questions, maybe we could have another talk. But if people wanted to check out your work or kind of see what you're up to, how could they connect with you? You have social media and your website?
Yeah, we're compassionprisonproject.org. And if you're interested in becoming a pen pal, or if you want to support us, there's a donate button there. You can send us so much money so that we can keep doing this work. And just, the people in prison are part of us. And when we're better to them, we're better to ourselves. That's the algorithm that I know to be true.